All right. So here we go. So five, four, three, two, and one. All right, folks, welcome back to the podcast. Very excited to have back Doreen Hills. Doreen, welcome back.
Thank you for having me. Super excited
Awesome.
to be here.
So Doreen is founder, director at the Center for Healing Trauma and Attachment. Their mission is to provide cutting-edge treatment approaches in healing traumatic distress, and they're committed to finding ways to provide quality and affordable therapy and to be the pioneer in healing trauma in the Northeast region. Doreen has been a mental health provider for over 20 years and has worked in various settings in New York, Philippines, Colorado. Her background includes intense, immersed experiences working with poverty-stricken fishermen in the Philippines, orphans that were severely neglected and abandoned, as well as Muslims in India. Um, Doreen, we've we've had you here several times, and today we're going to talk kind of like a part two. Last time we were here, you shared your insights on the trauma-informed intake and what that means. So today we're going to do kind of a part two to that, which is really interesting. So take it away. Bring us up to speed.
Yes, I think it's so important to really understand and have strategies in, doing your intake. And again, this part here will really focus more on, what type of questions that clinicians can actually, utilize. And these questions, I've developed some of this, and then some of that I derived on the wisdom of Bessel van der Kolk and other trauma experts, and then just weaved it into my work. So I wanted to just kind of bring up this piece here where, I think in the e world, like the techie world, we tend to, to just be we start to get comfortable with what is those what's offered to us. So let's say it's already lined up, it's easy, clients can use that, which overall is pretty helpful. But then if we really wanted to understand attachment, attachment between caregivers and even the generational attachment patterns and complex trauma, we need to weave what the words of wisdom from others have given us. And so I think it is important today to really dive into, those strategies, those questions, and yet very mindful of the person's story, not interrogative, like a detective, or not.
Right.
Well, we're all detectives, but we're, like not too much, not too interrogating. So I would love to share that with the listeners today. And I think I would like to focus on the adult version first, and maybe in the future we can dive into the other versions.
That sounds awesome. Okay. I love what you're saying here. So you're just in summary, in a sense, you're saying there's a lot of online versions of intakes, and you're kind of suggesting or advising they're good and they have their
Good.
place, but dot dot dot. Okay. So what are some questions we're talking about here?
Yes. And so I would like to start first with, every time you see clients, you are a detective. You're trying to understand and learn their stories. So here we go, guys. I think, pen and paper here, and listen to the Trauma Therapist Project to just get those information. So I would like to, ask people, ask our clients, the impact of the presenting issues on the relationship, on their relationship within themselves, and the immediate and extended family. So it is, I mean, you can weave it anytime when it's that right time and right moment. I think it is important to not only focus on the symptoms, but also what is the impact of those in their relationship with others.
Okay, so
um
let's say you're asking me that question. What would you
mhm.
say? How might you ask that?
So I will ask you, Guy. Okay, so you're saying that you're having a difficult time, with anger, or even having those flashbacks, or even, just the ability to connect with others. how is that impacting your relationship with your loved ones, with the people, with your coworkers? And I don't know how you're going to respond to that, but that can be a very good rich conversation as to the impact of those distress in
Hmm.
someone's system.
Well, I would say it's impacting a lot. I mean, the flashbacks are uh, kind of interfering with my ability to communicate with my partner.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Sometimes I don't know what's real and what's not. I feel like I'm not even, sometimes I feel like I'm not even here.
Right. And so what a good conversation, and it threads into, okay, are we dealing with, is this something that the client would like to focus on their goals, to be able to communicate, being, communicate with my friends and loved ones in a present way, being mindful so that you can weave it in that goal, the goal or treatment planning.
Hmm.
So oftentimes our clients come to see us because their relationships are affected by trauma. And so I think it is important to understand, get into the impact of it. Some of the things too, and again, this is more of the relationship with with their attachment figures, typically on the child, on their childhood. Who took care of you growing up? Who was your support system? Who was the one that you feel safe and secure with? And
Hmm.
leave it as a really good conversation, between the two of you.
Now, so why, kind of playing devil's advocate here, why is that important? I mean, we know why trauma is important, or attachment rather is important, but within this context, why is that important to talk
Well,
about?
it is. It's very important. So let's say you are dealing with a client that has children. And this gives us a good picture, or maybe a snippet of, let's say I asked that question, or I asked that question, and the person said, I don't have any. I'm alone. Or they might say, nobody is a safe person to me. So what happens is when they have that, when they have that perception or that experience, how are they taking care of their kids? What kind of attachment style they kind of lean into?
Hmm.
Is it disorganized? Is it ambivalent? Is it insecure attachment? So what And oftentimes in complex trauma, it is the disruption between the child, the disruption between the child and the caregiving system. So when we have a glimpse of what happened to them growing up, who took care of them, it gives us an idea of what kind of attachment style they are running into, or
Hmm.
what's blocking them, what's making them resilient, what makes them flourish. Or let's say, who took care of you, and they might say, well, I have aunts and uncles and grandpa and grandma that really, really love me. And do you still have connection with them? Absolutely. And how are they playing in your role as parents, as a parent now? I mean, boom, what a
Hmm.
rich conversation. And you're getting an idea of, okay, here's this individual that has support system. And so when they're having a difficult time, they can run to those folks. So does
Hmm.
that make sense?
Hmm. Yeah, it opens up a lot
It opens
of,
up a lot.
yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, awesome. All right, continuing on here, and another question, let's say.
Yes, another question. Again, in the context of that attachment, is what was your parents' discipline style look like?
Hmm.
And they might, well, they're pretty lax, or some folks may say, well, they're authoritative, authoritarian. They're very nurturing. Again, it's giving us a glimpse of what the attachment looked like. And oftentimes, when, let's say, as kids, I came from the Philippines, and my parents were, they're very strict. They're very disciplinarian. And, I kind of, again, in my caregiving system, I default to that. because that's what I've learned growing up. And so I have to tweak it. And, there's pros and cons on that. So it gives, again, that kind of a question. How your parents discipline, what is that like for you? How did that affect you before, and how is that affecting you now? It
Mhm.
gives us a picture of how they are in relation with their kids, and with their children. So that's pretty powerful.
Now, in terms of someone, you're doing an intake in terms of someone who's experienced trauma. Let's say I'm the client and you're
Mhm.
asking me about my parents, uh, was it disciplinary style or how your parents treated you? So moving along down that question line, what are you looking at in terms of how I'm experiencing my own trauma? What are you thinking about in asking that question in terms of looking at how I'm dealing with my trauma?
Yes, I pay attention to the body language. I don't know if I answer your question, but sometimes when we, again, how we ask the questions, and again, it's, very, very trauma sensitive care, paying attention to how the body is. So when they're sharing that with you, is there incongruency that's happening? Oh yeah, yeah, my dad beat me up, and then, but they're
Right. Which a
smiling,
lot of people have that affect too when they talk about that. Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And that can be a very good, a very good point for clinicians to, not that time yet, but something to where they can pay attention. They can make the client aware of it later on in sessions, to where, I noticed that when you talk about these stuff, that you're smiling. Now you're looking into more of, paying attention to, I mean, that sense of self-awareness.
Hmm.
So paying attention to the congruency of the body as well as the affect can really, it's really helpful when you are doing trauma informed care.
I love that. So it's in addition to kind of asking questions, there's also the observation
Absolutely.
of what's going on too.
Mm-hmm.
Observation of the body language and so forth. Congruency. Yeah, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. I noticed too, while since we're talking about congruency, I noticed people will, they will hunch, or even their shoulder starts to tighten, or even I call it the ballerina, or the tippy toe, your feet. It feels like, okay, what is happening? And you can sense it. Do we feel like we're getting flighty here? And when I sense that with clients, or even sense that with me, okay, and it's okay. There's something I want clinicians to remember. It is okay to pause and let them know, okay, I'm sensing a little bit of something in me, like we're feeling like we're getting disconnected. Are you
Hmm.
feeling that? And they might, oftentimes they will say, yeah, I think I need to take a little time out. Okay, so let's just take a moment. Let's plant our feet again. Let's take a deep breath. You and I doing this together. So in that way they don't feel like, okay, well, I'm going crazy here because Doreen is not even participating with me. Nope, you're gonna join them. Now you are going into the co-regulation and the attunement while you are understanding and learning their story. But then when they leave your office, the key to successful, I do believe the successful session is them leaving the office, your office, regulated.
Mm.
Super important. So when you notice that, when you feel like their feet is kind of like they're doing the ballerina or the tippy toe, help them plant it again, with you being there, with you
Hmm.
joining them.
So there's so much going on.
Oh, so
I
much.
mean, there's so many different levels that you're operating on. We started out, okay, we're going to talk about questions. Well, it's not just questions. There's
Not just
so
questions.
many things going on. One of the things that, in speaking with you on the many occasions that I have, that I really admire about you, Doreen, is you just have this grounded sense and presence about you. Now, let me ask you this. When you're working with someone, how much of your own experience do you share typically? Are you, and yes, it's different with every client, and we want to do it ethically or with boundaries
Mhm.
and so forth. But is that something that you do typically? Do you bring in your own experience of,
That's a beautiful question, Guy, because I ran into this just last week. And how I usually handle that, like that self-disclosure, again, right time and right moment. And your instinct will tell you, again, when you practice the sense of awareness and presence and just being attuned with them, your instinct will align with that. And so what happened to me last week was, okay, oh, this, the theme right now, I can share something. Now, what's the most critical thing here to ask yourself is this going to benefit the client? Or this is just more of a raging, or not raging, but is it just more to share it? The
Mhm.
biggest key here in self-disclosure is, how is this going to benefit the client? And so again, permission, I asked them, I have not too similar of a story with that you're sharing right now, but there's a theme that's kind of joining me with you. Can I share it? Is it okay? And it's not going to take too long. I'm talking about just few seconds. And if they said yes, sure, we would love to. I would love to hear that. And
Wow.
then,
Yeah.
does it make
So,
sense?
oh, it's great. So what you're doing there is a couple of things, right? You're asking permission. And what
Yes,
does that do? That gives them some control, some lets them know they're with you in a sense in that moment.
yes,
Not just Doreen leading the session and it's you're asking permission, you're bringing them into the weight of the relationship in a sense.
yes, always. And you and I talked about this on the first episode, that okay, this ship is theirs. They think that it's somebody's, another captain has to run that ship.
Right.
My very first session is, no, you are the captain of your ship. You know your story. I am just beside you. I'm just listening to what's happening. And so anything that I share with them, self-disclosure, again, it's for the service of the client. It has to be serving a purpose. Everything has to be intentional, not just, what, I just wanted to share this because I want to. Nope.
Hmm. Right. So we're talking about here intake questions, generally for adults, trauma-informed intake
Yes.
questions. Let's continue on. What other
Yes.
questions uh, you want to point
Okay.
out?
Oh, I also asked them, this is not something that's on just the typical intake, right? How do you handle stress? What do you do to take care of yourself? How do you cope with difficult emotions? How effective are those tools? How is that working for you? How is that not working for you anymore? What emotions do you find that are more difficult to manage? So it gives us an idea of how they are in terms of coping skills and their calming strategies. I also um, I also use this really cool tool. You probably familiar with Captain America's shield, right? That it's all circle, and so it's got different levels. And what I tell clients, and it can be the third session, it can be during your 90837, your therapy session. I ask them, can I do have the graph, and you can do it yourself. You have a graph of that, that shield. And I would tell them, Can you show your support system using this graph, using this tool? And so the closer they are, so in the middle, the closer those
Mm,
people are, those are the ones that are close to their support system. And what you're doing there is understanding their tribe. And you might be surprised that you might be on the first, on the first level, like, wow, and what made you think, adding me there now? Well, because I feel like I can trust you, I can talk to you
mhm.
about stuff. So, which is a very good way of, now for folks that are doing EMDR, this is already, you're already introducing the resource installation here, like those resource development, the RDI. So now these people, the clients can identify, here are the people that I feel safe and secure with. And most of them are probably, yeah, I like them, but they're not quite there yet. So
Mhm.
this is a powerful question that you can, well, this is an inquiry, to how many folks they have in their secure system.
Wow, I love that one. That can be very revealing too, because oftentimes, sometimes people can say, "Well, yeah, my sister, I'm really close to my sister." Well, then why do you have her all the way out here?
Exactly.
Well,
Right.
I just can't really tell her, share things with her or whatever. She triggers me or whatever.
Exactly. And so it's good to have that, because they can tell you who are triggering. Yes, they're still supportive, but they're triggering. But it's already giving you the idea, the template of, okay, when we are doing those resourcing, we can include these figures, these people in their lives. So it's more than just a pen and paper or a computer between the two of you. You are
Right.
already understanding their template, their story, by just asking those simple and yet powerful questions.
Right, right, right. And also, as you talked about, maintaining this observation, watching their body language, watching
Yes.
the congruency or incongruency, so very powerful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so utilizing, again, my suggestion to providers is be creative. Do not, don't take creativity in your intake and in your sessions. You know, it is important to, use art. It is also important to, bring the element of art. People tend to have a good idea when they're writing it in paper, when they can actually see it visually. You can use sand tray. For those of you who are fascinated with sand tray, you can do it in the second session or third session, even the first session. Create your resource, your support system world, and they can create, put objects that mean something to them. And so we need to not only, again, we need not only to look at the symptoms and the problems, we also have to look into those positive resource system, because eventually this is what we wanted to do, right? That is the
Mhm.
goal of trauma therapy, is for healing and for recovery and for resiliency. And so you're already gathering this information. You may not use it right away, but you're putting it in a box, in a very, important box, that once, oh, well, let's say a client might, I'm struggling right now, I don't know who can help me. Well, let's pull away. Let's take a moment here. How about your great aunt that's close to you, that she seems to be so dear in your heart, that every time you hear her voice, she just calms you? I didn't even think about her.
Mhm.
But it's more than intake, it's more than paper. You are already giving them, because again, you're the guide for them. You're a
Mhm.
witness and a guide for them, like, remember this time when you were, when you're having a difficult time, this is what you're telling me, that you're good at this, blah blah blah. you know Personal strengths and resources. Do not forget to share or to ask those questions. How do you get where you're at now?
Mhm.
And I'll give you an example on this. So, how let's say I'm asking you, geez, you've gone through so much adversities in life, and it feels like it's like all coming, all at once. But there is also always that crack in the, crack, that like little slim crack there, to where maybe a sign of hope. But what do you do to keep going? You're here now, sitting with me, talking with me. So what is, what are you, what get you where you're at? And they may take a moment, and I tell them, take a moment to pause. I wanted you to just kind of chew on these, chew on this inquiry. And people might say, hope. I'm not giving up hope. Or they might say prayers. Or they
Mhm.
might say, I need, walking, this distance. So what's happening there, which is so beautiful, is they're already giving you strategies, their ability to be resilient in difficult times. Or maybe they might say, I just remember my grandma and grandpa telling me to never give up.
Mhm.
So when you're getting this information, you can use that when they're having a difficult time. Remember the time when you were telling me that, you're not lose you don't want to lose hope? How can we use this now for you?
Mhm.
And again, it's not those, the question is so gentle, and at the same time, so in attuned to who are you as an individual, who are you as an individual. And it's not just question of what is your strength, what are the things that you're good at. It's not like those black and white.
Right, right, right. Awesome.
Does that
Doreen,
make sense
it
though?
makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. It's so inspiring to me. There's you supervise clinicians also,
I
correct?
do.
With and as we kind of wind down here, I want to kind of close with this. Do you sense in younger clinicians, is there a uh how are they fearful of interacting with people who've experienced trauma, generally speaking? Because what you're talking about here is kind of like a fearlessness, it's a respect, but it's a
Mm.
moving into their world. And sometimes, I mean, a lot of times, trauma can be frightening. And I think for a newer clinician, it can be scary, even though they want to help.
Of course. Yes. So I think that's the nature of, and I've been there, all of us been there. Like, you're afraid, if I ask this question, am I re-traumatizing them? Or if I
Right,
ask
right.
something, something related to lethality or risk of suicide, am I going to, to push them to do that? And I think it is, here's my take or my suggestions to new clinicians: be open to asking questions. Your supervisor is there to help you. And if you feel like, I need more, again, from being fearful to fearless, I think it is important for people for clinicians to ask and ask and ask,
Mm,
seek supervision, seek, like mentor, not shadowing, actually shadowing providers that's been doing this over and over again, and be okay to make mistakes. I mean, I've made mistakes many times, when I was new. And so for us to be fearless, we just have to practice it, and again, combining it with good supervision. So oftentimes, I think this is my experience, we get so caught up with the theories, we get so caught up with what we've learned in the universities, that this is just the black and the white. And
mhm.
again, it takes some time. So be forgiving of you, be kind to yourself. I've learned to just ask questions. There are no stupid questions. And I tell this to my supervisees, just ask me anything. And if
Right.
I don't know, you and I are going to research it.
Right.
So from fearful to fearless, that's my, that is my suggestion for new clinicians.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, Doreen. Awesome. So, what's the best way for people to reach you and learn more about what you're doing?
Yes, so people can reach me on our website. It's chtainc.org, or they can give us a call at 970-397-4609.
Okay, we'll have that linked up at the show notes page here at the traumatherapistpodcast.com. Doreen, always awesome and inspiring talking to you. We'll have you back. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, take care.